You are listening to the Voice of Bold Business Radio, and I am your host, Jessica Dewell of Red Direction. You are listening to The Need to Be Right. Today, I'm having a conversation with Geoffrey X. Lane, who's been on this program before. You can go to the website and see all of the programs that he has been on, and I want you to enjoy the show because his thoughtfulness and his information gathering and his passion about understanding how societies work, plus his preparation for the show really comes through, and there's a lot of great information. In fact, a big part of it is this need to be right comes from this need to control. And this need to control comes from this uncertainty. And we touch on a few things without going into too much detail about why those things are happening. And the biggest one is that we really talk about in the grand scheme of the whole conversation is the existence of such rapid change. Even though technology is changing, even though our society is changing, even though how we receive news is changing, what we believe and how we filter it is all changing right now. It's in flux. Our society, this North American society, and I'm going to specifically talk about the US for this moment, we're not that old in the grand scheme of things of the world. People immigrated here and we've got this thing. And so we're learning. And what came out of this conversation that I found the most profound was everything we thought we knew about success, everything we thought we knew about independence may not be what success and independence actually are. And those definitions and the way they look in our society, both in a personal home life experience, also in a work and how work and business contribute to this is changing. I will be completely honest. I publicly apologize during the show. And so listen for it. I tell you what, listen for it. Every single time I do a show, I have an amazing amount of knowledge imparted to me. My ideas are expanded and things that I thought were right turned out not to be right. So we all have it, this need to be right. Enjoy this conversation with myself and Geoffrey X. Lane.
Welcome to the Voice of Bold Business, the show that provides everything smart leaders need to evaluate situations, build relationships, and create solutions. Jessica Dewell candidly talks about the skills necessary to build tenacity and do more with less. And now, here's Jessica.
So I don't even remember where, Geoffrey, this conversation
It started about 3 ago when I said most people would rather be right than happy.
Was that our superhero conversation?
Yeah, that's when Joel and everybody else was there.
Exactly. So we'll reference the superhero conversation because people really need to listen to that. That was a great one. I'm glad you're here today to talk about the need to be right, this weirdness that we all face, and we've all been there. One, it's a developmental stage of just being human. I mean, look at every single 2 and 3 and 4-year-old out there in the world. It's a developmental stage. But then how it shows back up in our life is very interesting. If you're thinking back to that other conversation, tell us more about why that came up and more about where it comes from in your belief system and experience.
I think the need to be right is accelerated or agitated in our modern age because of all of the rapid changes that are going on. Since we sort of said we're going to do this, I go doing some research. And in the research, I only found information that confirmed that I was right. Oh, God. Observing people, which is what I really do, is observe people. And I've led various workshops really since my 40s. Which is now over 30 years. I started to realize that most people would rather be right than happy. And I started to get curious, well, why? Why do people do this? And then the next question is, well, where does it start? When you hit upon it, it starts in preschool, 3, 4, 5, 6. Because when you're little, you have no control over your environment, none whatsoever. It's a mother, a father, a teacher, a grandmother, a grandfather, the neighbor next door, bigger kids. They're all enforcing the rules on you all the time. Don't do that. Geoffrey, don't do that. Oh, Jessica, that's a bad girl. You're really bad. You shouldn't do that. And so what starts in the process of socializing this little wild animal that is a human being, because we don't like to think of ourselves as animal, but we're these little wild social animals that could, if left alone, be ultimately destructive and just wild. 2 weeks ago, I went over to Vancouver to see my grandchildren and my son and his children and his wife. It was just a great opportunity to go see them all. It was a sea of 2-year-olds to 5-year-olds running rampant in this quite large facility called the Science Center, looking at science, banging things, seeing how that works, and turning wheels and making electricity. And I'm watching the wildness of this. And the interesting thing is that I thought, well, yeah, even at 2 years old, 3 years old, we're busy establishing our territory. Boom, right? The little boys are running around, and the little girls are running around as well. There isn't this feminine, masculine kind of thing about it at that point. They don't have that many strategies at 2 and 3 years old. Now, you can see those that are more socialized than others by watching the parents. Oh, no, don't do that. Don't. No, bad. And you see the kids going like this. He's being natural, just being exuberant, and bang, there's all these injunctions. But of course, as we grow older, we get socialized. But then the rebel comes out in teenage years. It's like, I've had enough with school. I've had enough with parents telling me. And we start experimenting. And then we start discovering. And we find out that, yeah, if you drink 6 beers in a row, chug-a-lug, you're probably going to throw up. Mm-hmm. Or if you chase girls really hard, they run. And girls find out, oh, these make everybody interesting. Oh, so sexuality and life experiments, and again, it's in this continuous piece of trying to discover boundaries and structures and the way that we are in the world. Then we get adults and we think, well, I've just graduated from university or college and I've got my degree or I've just got a new job and I've got, it could even start with a driver's license. I know how to drive. Mm-hmm. Damn. And that's where being right comes from. Mm-hmm. From a multitude of sources. Let's take science. Science is only right until the next discovery. That's very, very disturbing. Science itself, the researchers in science and at universities all around the world know that being right is only the edge or the boundary of knowledge. So what I might know today can be invalidated tomorrow because we have more knowledge. Humans, the rest of us who are not in that mindset, here, for example, cholesterol is bad, and you stop eating butter and bacon and all those things, and then about 8 years later, out comes, oh, that might not be true. So that gets very confusing. And that's actually led the internet, because it distributes these wild theories, not substantiated, but wild theories, creates all this doubt about what is true, what is not true. Is science true? Recently I read an article, is the only truth in the world is mathematics. Okay. Ooh. and I thought about it, but I got into the reading the article that the only truth in the world is mathematics. And what he was pointing out is that math has been consistent as a structure for centuries and centuries. Mm-hmm. Still 2 + 2 = 4. Unless you're a politician, and it could be 2 + 2 can equal anything. In this atmosphere of what is true, what is accurate, what is knowledgeable, has driven up the tension inside people that when they interact with the world and they get mad now. I think apprehension and fear and anxiety It's at a level that my parents went through during the Second World War. It's at a level, but it's mostly intellectual, and it ends up being incredibly emotional. When you asked me this, I sort of went off and can we do a program about this? I sort of said, well, okay, that's what I think it is.
You were talking about this concept of truth and accuracy and boundaries. All of that comes down to what we're rooted in this concept of right, wrong, in, out, these opposites that really are only constructs of the mind part of our body. They have nothing to do with our heart or our spirit, the spirituality part of us, whatever our belief system is. And so let's talk a little bit about this concept of right and wrong and in and out and being little social monster creatures. And anybody who has had kids, that is not an understatement.
That's right.
Not at all. It's the absolute positive truth. That's all they're learning. What do I do to belong? What do I do that gets me ostracized? What do I do to receive acceptance? What do I do that gets me shut out? And those are all things that in that developmental process, I mean, they're the first things we learn. And they're the things that are usually reinforced to us during these developmental times because it's our family. I remember having a conversation with Ryan when I was pregnant. At one point, I remember saying to him, I said, here's the deal. If we decide we're going to walk around on our hands everywhere we go, Carter's going to walk around on his hands everywhere we go, regardless of everybody else walking on their feet. And that's the way it's going to be in our house until he leaves. And then he can make his own choice. But as arbitrary as that is, we're making that distinction. And that also happens in the workplace, and they get muddied in the workplace in this concept of right and wrong and this gray area of somebody decided, here's what the company is, here's what the mission is, here's how we're going to do it, here's the why we're going to be doing it. And everybody can join in and belong, or they can join in and not belong and feel ostracized. So it comes down to this, I think, more in, out, right, wrong. And I'm curious what you think about some of that.
I'm in agreement with the idea that everything is debatable other than mathematics. Everything is debatable.
Even in our time.
I do a lot of reading and a lot of research. I read something. First thing I ask myself, is it true? Is there evidence to support it? That happens when you've taught, even as a lecturer at a university, you have to have evidence to support your argument. There are some things that we hold as self-evident. I mean, that comes from your constitution. Yes. Well, that's not accurate. There are a lot of things that are not self-evident. That is an inaccurate statement. Now, I want to preface it. When it was written, it was an accurate statement. What happens is we get stuck in our own time warp. We do something and it works. Wow, that's cool. I did that and this happened. Mm-hmm. Wow. So then we do it again. Oh, I did that and it works. Oh, then we go, okay, I'll do it again. We do it and it works. And you go, damn, that's the truth. Now that's the truth at that moment in time. So it's the truth for me today. You know, it is March 16th, 11/28, whatever it is, and it's true. Mm-hmm. But you know, March 20th, it might not be true anymore. If we don't update our belief system, and a belief system is an artificial mental construct that we develop over these tests. Oh yeah, it works. And then we say, that's it. And we build up these from 5 years old up. Mm-hmm. I know plenty of 5-year-olds who can manipulate their parents like a master propaganda agent.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Oh,
anybody
yeah.
who's had kids will say, oh, God, she got me, or oh, he got me. Oh, that little so-and-so, or oh, that little. Sometimes we get really kind of like.
We get bristly.
We get because we know we've been managed. So that 5-year-old in us, all of us, has been accumulating all of these different strategies that they work. That works. This works. That. If I want to get girls, I have to behave this way. If I want to get paid well, I will need to behave this way. So we accumulate a gazillion pieces. It's like a giant jigsaw. a gazillion pieces of these beliefs of what works. The only problem comes up is when we think that they're right.
And I'm going to disagree with you, because we all need to have things we think are right. And we all need to have things we think are wrong, because it comes back down to other conversations we've had, Geoffrey, about preference. We only can know our values when we know what we prefer. And we can only live our values when we actually state our preferences out in the world. My right and wrong are mine.
That's a linked piece of logic that needs to be deconstructed. Your preferences are just what you like, and they're based upon choices you made at different times in your life, right?
Sure.
That's not your values. No, that's not your values. As soon as you say they're your values, you're being right about it. When I was growing up, one of the things that I believed that was one of my preferences was to treat everybody well and to trust naturally. I no longer believe that. The difference is that I approach every situation, everybody, with an openness, and I'll wait and see whether or not I trust them.
Of course, sure.
No, but you see, I didn't used to believe that. I just thought, well, if I behave in a trustworthy manner, in an open manner, it will work. Because it did for years. And
I'm talking about things that have not happened to us, that are outside of our life experience. And I'm going to bring up something really controversial, not to talk about the controversy, but to illustrate a point. We're going to go straight for it. We're talking about pro-life, pro-choice. We're talking about abortion here. Now, there are a lot of people out there that have never been in a situation where they have had to contemplate this as an option for them. A man in a relationship with a woman, two women, doesn't matter. Something around this baby in this life. And I've never had this experience. I've never had this experience, so I can't put myself in anybody else's shoes. And I believe in the right to life. I also believe in the right to choose. And therein lies a fundamental right-wrong discrepancy within my belief system that doesn't come from my own personal experience, but that exists. And I think I'm talking more about that particular piece, in the sense that we have to work certain things out for ourselves based off of the information we seek out, based off of the people we choose to surround ourselves with, and based off of the ability to be willing and open to hear other points of view that will either validate what we think, or we've at least considered it and said, that's not for us. And I think that's really where it comes into this need to be right when we talk about divisiveness, in the sense where I've decided something, but I have no personal experience around it. I've decided this is what I believe. All I have are my belief systems and the way that I can think about it from my experiences. And it goes back to very much what you were talking about of, until we test a boundary, until we're in it for ourselves, we can think whatever we want. And we may be in for a rude awakening in that moment, or we might be completely reinforced in that moment.
I agree with that basic premise. Until you've experienced it, it's very difficult to have a balanced, open position about it. If you approach anything looking for validation, you will find it.
Totally and completely find it.
You'll find it. You'll validate your position, your wanting to know. It's about going beneath that a little bit. Why do people want validation? Because the world is a scary place, and at least when I feel right, I get a little endorphin rush. I get confirmation that I'm worthwhile. I get confirmation that my beliefs are strong, which of course is all bullshit. Now, if you've made up a story about yourself that is full of falsehoods, you really are in trouble.
Agreed.
The only way to look at it is to look at what these, I refer to people as being a giant jigsaw, is to look at these individual pieces that interlock. Sometimes when you take out one piece, the puzzle will reform, or it might collapse completely. And I've seen that as a program leader and as a facilitator and a coach. I'll give you an example that is real, but I'll describe it in a way that people can understand. An individual is driving down the street and they get out on the highway, and suddenly a tire blows and they hit an overpass. They hit the leg of the overpass. They wake up in hospital with a shattered body and they have to rebuild. That's pretty extreme. But most of us are like this. We're driving down the highway of our beliefs, looking out of the front window. We look only out of the front window. We don't notice the beliefs, just like we don't notice the screen of our car windshield. We don't notice it until something hits it. It might be an accident. It might be a truck going by on the other side of the street, splashes water. I mean, we put the windshield wipers on it. Our beliefs are exactly the same. We don't examine them, or most people don't examine them until an occurrence forces them to look at them deeply and profoundly.
So if we were to put that into like our own experiences, and I'm even thinking about in this concept of work, whether I'm an employee or I'm a leader, I'm somewhere in the middle, or I'm at the top or I'm at the bottom, it doesn't matter where. This life of hard knocks, every single hard knock is a serious whack and personal experience that really challenges everything we've known up to that point. And we must rebuild from that, whether that's unexpectedly getting fired, whether that's finding out that you have a client that is totally different than the way you expected, whether that's leading a company and finding out somebody's been embezzling from you. I mean, there's so many things, right?
It's interesting you brought up embezzling, because that actually happened to me in a small company. That actually triggered the collapse of that division and completed the collapse 2 years later of the rest of the company, because we were never able to recover from losing 80% of the revenue in that Seattle office. So, yeah, did that change my mind about people? I've been fired once, once in my life, and it was like, what? 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 And I said, no, I will not do that to an employer. And they said, that's what you are needed to do. No, I won't do it. Well, then you're fired. And at the time, I was young enough that I went, okay, got it. And I left. The other interesting part of that triggered me to start my very first company. And I went in direct competition with them. I was busy proving that they made a mistake. I was so busy. I'll show them. I'll show them. They made a mistake. I'll be right about this. I'll be right about this. Burnishing my own shield. Well, I did prove them wrong.
Let's talk about drive and ambition for a minute, because we can get in our own way with our drive and our ambition. And I'm not saying they're bad. They're very necessary. And it's only through drive and ambition and a big idea and this concept that we've got this thing that nobody else has and we're going to disrupt the world, disruption actually happens. There's something to be said for that. But when we do it to our own detriment, and that's where when we stop and we forget to ask other people for their opinions, when we stop and we forget to bounce ideas off the wall and get out of our own head and actually see what the reality is of other people's experience, to just know what we might be facing, so we don't have to come dead stop against a mountain. We can already know the mountain is coming and decide how we're going to deal with it.
You hit upon two cross points there: drive or ambition. Drive and ambition, the energy behind those, I don't know that they're necessary, but they're there. And we use them internally. They're kind of like extra batteries. They keep us going when we're clear about what we want to do and our ambition. You've touched upon something I call life energy. You've touched on a piece of yourself that is deeply affected by that. Yes. There's no guarantee that your drive and ambition is going to be successful. None whatsoever. You might have an idea that is just this and you insist, and because you're so busy, part of it is you are committed to being right about this idea. You are deeply committed to your own ambition. You're committed, and you go out and you do it, and I started this company, and it goes bust because it runs into reality. Not everybody wants this service or wants this product or wants this job. You just might think. That's the question. People get stuck in their realities. They're not in current reality. They're often in old realities. And they need to do a mind shift. They need to shift their minds into current reality. the pro-life argument, it was irrelevant in the 1800s. Why?
Right.
Because more than 30% of the women died during birth. They didn't understand that kind of choice. They didn't have to make that ethical choice. Didn't have to make ethical choices in the 1800s about extending life, keeping people alive with machines and intervention in surgery.
Yes.
Didn't have that choice. So current reality in the 1800s is one thing, but current reality today is something else. I would not be here if it wasn't for heavy intervention surgery. I had a multiple bypass. My life exists today because a surgeon cracked me open and did reconstructive surgery around my heart. What's my current reality? Do I owe my life to this surgeon? Because, what did I do? Was it karma? Why did I get this? I've been such a good, I could have gone down that path. But then the surgeon was brilliant. He said, because I said to him, why did this happen? And he said, don't know. You'll probably never know. But you fit a certain genetic profile that probably started with your great-great-great-great-great-grandfather. So we don't know. Just be happy that you made the right decision to come to this hospital.
Wow. I love that. Admitting that we don't know because it's not in our control. And everything we've been talking about this need to be right, this subtext of everything we've said is this concept of what can I control? And if we feel out of control, our need to be right increases.
Absolutely.
And when we recognize there's just stuff we can't control. So what can we control? And let's make choices around that. And let's take responsibility for that. It frees our need up to be right, to actually just seek what's best at this place and this time, knowing it can change.
Absolutely. I mean, that is really where I started out within the beginning about science always talks about this is current reality. This is currently what we know. If people were to take that position, if a business owner says, well, based on what I know right now, this is the best decision I can make. This is the best choice I can make. If you've ever been a small business owner, at one time I had 28 employees, and I had to look at, well, where are we going? What are we doing? And look at my own economic survival versus my economic responsibilities through employment. In other words, I hired these people, so I have an economic responsibility and a choice around it. I personally was losing money. Everybody else was making money. I thought, well, that's good on one side, but it's bad on the other. And so I had to make a choice. So I went as an independent consultant. Now, is that a cold-hearted, logical, oh, don't you care about these people? Oh, I loved them to pieces. Made sure that they all had rights to go do what they needed to do.
This is a place where our personal life interferes with business more than we recognize. I am going to just state right now, think about all of the people you know in their 30s. By the way, I'm in my 30s, okay? I'm in my 30s. Think about all the people in their 30s that have families that go home to live with their parents for whatever reason. Doesn't matter. It's their choice. They end up there living with their parents. Something along the way, the choices, if you look back, and the decisions that were made when you look back, everybody could probably find out the one thing that happened. And are they the same or not? Doesn't really matter. But the point is, they're there right now. And those people have a choice. They have a choice. What do I want to do now? Is it more important to me to live with my parents so I can send my kids to a private school while I'm working? Or do I want to be out on my own? Those are hard things to think about. And they're actually hard things for the parents of these 30-somethings that are living with them too, because they have to weigh, like you did. I raised my child to be an adult. I raised my child to be self-sufficient. They had been self-sufficient. Do I buy into where they're at right now? And is it right for me right now? You know, we go all the way back, like it's time to put your kid on the bus and their first day of school and everybody's crying. But what about the times we forget about when they've actually gone out on their own and they've said, and us included, we're doing something new and we're going to try something. And if we go into it with our eyes wide open, This is a great story. I remember when I was in college, I was at K-State. I had called my mom up on a Saturday, and I said, Mom, I'm dropping out of college. I'm moving to Seattle with my boyfriend. It did not go over very well. And she goes, I will be there on Monday, and you're going to have lunch with me. And I was like, well, okay, here we go. Was I testing boundaries? Probably. Did I see something I wanted to go after? Absolutely. Was I sure I was making a good decision after considering all the stuff around how I was brought up and learned how to make decisions? Absolutely. And I remember sitting with my mom at lunch, and I'm scared out of my brain. I mean, I'm sweating bullets and my face is all red. I can't eat the lunch that's in front of me because I know I'm being judged every second of every moment that we're together. And she's been spending it's probably more like 36 hours since I had told her, just thinking of all the stuff she's going to hammer me with, right? And I'm ready for it. And finally, I said to her in this conversation, I said, Mom, I know you love me. I know all of this has to do with your love for me right now. And I said, what's the worst that can happen? I said, my worst that can happen is I have to come home. And I said, so I guess really what I need to know is, if I have to come home, can I come to your home? Can I land there? And tears, we both started crying. And of course, yes, you sure can, no problem, yes. And I said, well, then I've got to try it. Things went down their path and off they went. That was the end of it. And here I am today. But other people have a different experience. Other people have to go home, if you will. Being able to have that support system is very different than having this need to control.
Well, you started off with kids moving back with their parents.
I did.
What's that?
Yeah.
See, kids being independent of their parents is a new social phenomenon that really occurred in the Industrial Revolution. Prior to that, parents, grandparents, and children and grandchildren all lived in the same vicinity, often in the same home. As a Northern European came from that.
I did not know that. Wow.
The Industrial Revolution broke up the agrarian, artisanal guild type structure. That's when a blacksmith taught a blacksmith that taught a blacksmith, farmer taught a farmer, a sheep farmer taught a sheep farmer, a woman taught weaving it was a lineage.
Do you think we're making a swing back?
Yes, thank God we're making a swing back.
Oh, I love this perspective. Duh, everybody who is watching this on video will totally see the whole screen light up a little bit brighter. And those of you listening, I'm hoping you hear it in my voice. Okay, tell us more about that swing that you see, Geoffrey.
Well, we're supposed to be talking about being right. You see, the parents from the 50s and 60s and 70s and 80s have this concept that their kids move out, build their own lives, and have financial success. Well, that world ended a while ago. Mm-hmm. The economic uptick from the Second World War that brought affluence died, and gone totally. It's been gone for 20 years. It's a myth, but people don't keep themselves in current reality.
I've got to stop you right here. Hey, everybody who's living with your parents, I secretly, and now I'm openly telling you I judged you, and I apologize.
Yeah, you should.
And I apologize.
Yep. Because prior to this, knowledge was passed down from grandfather to grandson, from father to son. And it was an accumulated thing, but we were either agrarian farmers or guild type people. We built things, we provided services. We weren't isolated in these industrial complex. The Industrial Revolution brought amazing riches and amazing things to people, but it also completely societies.
Yeah.
Because it broke the line between people. America is going through a crisis because we don't live within the vicinity of our parents. We don't live with our grandparents. We don't have them around. There's nothing to edge and take off the muck
Okay, so I'm totally going to go philosophical here, and I'm going
Do we
to
have time?
not necessarily, but I just want to. But I'm thinking about what you're saying, and in relationship to other countries on this globe, other societies and cultures on this globe, America's pretty young, and so I'm wondering if this is part of the concept of our country growing up. Oh, I'm sorry. I know this is another political topic right now, but we have foundation and a history of our society being built on immigrants and people coming here to work and live and become citizens. And they have to leave their families. They have to take this step. And I'm wondering if that's part of what we're still learning of, even though that happens and those steps are taken for whatever reason they are, that choice was made. We've got this, we should not expect that of our children in relationship to us.
We're a mobile society, North America. And by the way, the United States isn't the only country built on immigration. That's a great American myth, and you all... Yeah,
right, we're younger.
Try Canada. We're 200 years younger than you, and we're built on immigration.
Well, there you go. Thank you. Look at this, guys.
Try Australia. Try New Zealand. They're equally as new and grown in different ways.
Exactly.
So immigration, as it explored and built in America, you left family as an immigrant. I left family tradition behind. I left family knowledge behind. I didn't really appreciate that until my father was in his 70s and I was in my 50s. There was lots to learn from him. I never had those opportunities to have conversations about, how do you handle this, Dad? How do you handle that? What about this? Have you ever had this experience? What about you, Mum? What about this? It is because you don't settle. We don't settle. I mean, I've moved so often, and that unsettled kind of energy is what part of another 200 years, it won't matter. But I think actually technology is going to be part of the solution of this.
Cool. Okay.
Because FaceTime, even this model, Zoom,
yes,
allows me to have conversations with friends who are thousands of miles away, and I can have live interactive conversations. I'm not talking about Facebook. Facebook's just one great big false image bag of I said that out loud.
Yeah, you just said that out loud. You know what? I'm thinking to myself, if there's anybody left listening to it at this point, just tell your friends it's worth getting to the end, because you're probably going to be challenged a little bit in some way and ruffled just a little bit in some way by this conversation.
Geoffrey ruffles everybody.
That's the truth.
So I think we start believing our own BS. We start believing our own BS. So we are in North America, the last of the sort of out west, sort of rugged individualist. I can do this. Let me slap my leg back on and I can hobble this, or it doesn't matter. I've got this frontier energy. Well, we have a lot of this in Canada. You know, we still have frontiers. You know, we're tough. We can do this. But you see, the problem with that is that we don't draw on the collective wisdom or the collective spirit of friends and family that Europe does. This stable societies where, you know, grandmother lives up the street and grandpa lives down there. That might sound awful, but there's so much collective wisdom, knowledge, and people that we don't have access to. We just don't here.
Right.
Right.
And I agree with you. And I agree that technology can be the solution. I mean, holy moly, Geoffrey, we used to actually just live hours away from each other. And then I moved all the way to Colorado. So we're a lot farther away, but we still get to have this type of connection. And I get to learn from you, and I get to experience with you, and I get to develop ideas with you. And that is something that's pretty amazing. And so this concept of this need to be right, this desire for control, might actually come from just stopping and surrendering and saying, who can I build my network with? Who can I learn from right here?
The need to be right really comes from anxiety. really comes from deep anxiety or agitation or feeling that the world is kind of crazy. And, you know, the incidence of road rage and the incidence of racial insult and racist behavior has just gone through the roof. The more unsettled and the more tense we all feel, because it feels like we're under attack. And the word is feels like. We're under attack, that our values and who we are is under attack, whether that's a business or a person or just sitting at home watching the news. It feels like, oh, it's like an onslaught. So that in and itself sort of breeds more, well, I better just tighten up and just get on with this. And yeah, I'll be right. I'll do this. And it is about taking a step back, perhaps having conversations with good friends face to face. If you can't do it face to face, do it but via technology, by reading. And yet, if you're running your own business, you know, almost all your energy is used up running your business. It's kind of like, oh God, you know, it's for some people, this technology has made life a business, not a 40-hour week, but an 80-hour week.
Yeah.
And that's the danger. Perspective and broadening perspective. I have conversations with a good friend who lives in Ohio, another good friend who lives down in Houston. I have you in Denver. I have a good friend back in Montreal and another in Toronto. We have these conversations. And I'm sometimes staggered. You know, are we living on the same planet? I'm a news geek. I just learned that I'm a news geek. I've been talking to news geeks.
Ooh, a new label.
But I suck up news, but I don't suck up, you know, Facebook is not about news.
Right.
Facebook is about gossip. It's about established opinions. And it feels so good, right? Oh, look, I'm right. Oh, yes, look, more. Oh, yeah, I can click on it. Oh, look, I'm right. So it's kind of, it just makes your own bullshit bigger and deeper.
Be on the lookout for that. And I'm guessing when you tune in to the next show that Geoffrey is a part of, you're going to be hearing a similar thing. We got to watch out for ourselves, because when we get in our own way, we create our own blind spots. One of the things that I am learning about through this show is I know a lot, and I have a lot of experience compared to the actual age that I am in some ways. And in other ways, I have very little experience compared to the age that I am today. And it's through this, I get to challenge myself, and I get to see, where can I expand? What can I look at? What do I need to let go of? Where are my needs to be right? And really find out, do they work for me today? Because if they do, cool. But if they don't, maybe it's because they did before that I have that, and it's okay. It's okay that I had this need to be right, because now that I know, and I know it's not right, I get to make a new choice, which is very empowering, and it reduces the anxiety that Geoffrey was talking about.
You know, you can spend your life being right, or you can be happy.
You are listening to the Voice of Bold Business Radio, the need to be right. I am your host, Jessica Dewell of Red Direction. It is incredibly bold to admit that we're wrong. It is incredibly bold to let go of this need to be right and recognize that our need to be right is from our own experience, or what we think our experience might be based off of all of our past experiences. How's that for a little bit of a cyclical thing? You can find all the program notes at voiceofboldbusiness.com/P46. That's P for program 46, or search for the need to be right. Being a leader today is not easy. It takes constant effort. It's your story and your experience as being part of this conversation that develops and continues to evolve what it means to be a leader today. And I want to know from you, what lesson have you learned when you, at all costs, needed to be right?
Subscribe at thevoiceofboldbusiness.com and get more information, program notes, and past episodes. Bold leaders approach each situation and focus on action to achieve a higher level of leadership. Jessica Dewell, your business advocate, is the host of the Voice of Bold Business Radio. Thank you for joining us.